And we're live. And we're live. Sorry, just have to switch into English. Hello and welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another show of Three or Two of a Kind. As you see, I'm not Marcus. I'm replacing the famous media donors who decided to go on a small family trip today. So you got to stick with me and with Kevin at this point. The KI of the marketing, which I remember from last time.
Yeah, KI, for everybody who doesn't speak German, is the German equivalent to AI, künstliche Intelligenz, equivalent to the English artificial intelligence. So obviously front and center. And I think with you, Andy, thanks for jumping in. By the way, you and me, we're gonna highlight AI even more in any instance.
Yes. Actually, I thought about, did you hear the story about this extra finger that you can buy? So people would think that you're actually an AI, but you're a real person because just you have more fingers than you used to have.
Yes, it's a perfect costume for Halloween if you don't want to,
Be
buy a big
recognized.
costume.
I think also there's some burglars who did this at this point. Perfect. So today we are supposed to redirect you gently into the weekend, and we brought a couple of topics that we wanted to talk with you about. And therefore, I would say we can get started right away, right?
Let's do it.
And things are going to change pretty drastically if I see what you have been up to. And let me just send you on top of this screen. Perfect. On how the way we are actually working is going to shift into completely other dimensions. I thought it was really fascinating, the piece you put together at this point, because it just kind of accelerates everything at just a glance.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually a piece that I've been working on for weeks. No kidding. I think I've been working on this for 7 or 8 weeks. Because the writing was not the hard part, but the hard part was translating a feeling that I think most of us are feeling into a structure and into writing. And so that feeling started actually at the end of last year. So we're 6 months into that feeling, if you will, right? 6 months into that wave. And that started with Claude Code 4.6 and with OpenClaw, and with this whole launch of what I would call agentic coding. Good thing, agentic coding is pretty accessible, obviously with some risks and stopgaps, but it significantly changed what I do, not just how I work, but what I do. So for the last 4 years, I was an advisor, and I'm still an advisor. But now what changed is that I actually can do a lot of the work for my clients instead of just giving them strategic recommendation. So the way that I position myself is not even as the consultant. I intentionally chose the word advisor because in my mind, the advisor helps understand the strategy. The consultant helps understand the implementation of that strategy. And then maybe a freelancer or the in-house team actually does the thing. Now I can do all of these levels, right? So I don't know what to call myself. Maybe it's a full stack consultant or something
Builder.
like that. A builder, honestly, builder. Yes, I think I love the word builder. But the reality is over the last 6 months, I have built and automated tools and processes for my clients that significantly speed them up. And so this memo is split into 3 different parts because I think that effect that we're seeing stretches across 3 different areas. And the first area is software. So software is interesting because we all noticed that big stock indices for software saw massive drops, and stocks for software companies are still down. We saw an initial 25% decrease when Anthropic published, I think it was Claude with some plugins, right? Some like project management plugins and accounting plugins, all that kind of stuff. So the market reacted very heavily. And I personally, when I contrast that to what I'm seeing, I think that's pretty unjustified. I think that is more of a fear that is not going to be true for every company. Why is that? Because software is more than code. So that's the first finding. Software is more than code because if you think about enterprise companies, even non-enterprise companies, they have sales teams, they have customer support, they have uptime SLAs, they have a legal liability clauses, etc. They have certificates, they have regulations. So these companies are doing a lot more than just providing the code. So I think that is a bit unjustified. And in this memo, I'm laying out my reasoning for why I think that software, that AI is not going to replace software, right? Enterprise AI can fulfill the code, but it's not going to replace the software companies. Second thing is the effect of AI on distribution. So distribution is interesting, right? Because over the last couple of years, we have not really seen a new channel opening up. A lot of people are saying AI is a new channel, but it's not a new channel. And when we talk about channels, we're talking about things like Google search or social media, right? TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit. These are channels, distribution channels. But AI is not a distribution channel. AI is more of an interface and productivity change. So less of a new channel. And the problem that introduces is that the reach of these channels that we have is compressing because there are no new channels. But these days, it's easier than ever to be present on these channels because you can use AI to write a LinkedIn post or to edit your videos, right? So some channels are harder than others, but it's overall easier than ever to be present off these channels, which means there's more inventory of content, which means it's harder to get attention. So in my mind, there's only two ways to kind of use AI to kind of make to still get something out of these channels, and that is you have to play the game, right? You have to be faster than everybody else, which means you need to be better at executing with AI, but also with good judgment. And two is that product is the marketing. So what I mean by that is AI allows AI basically strips away the marketing butter from the dish, right? So if you go to a nice restaurant, a lot of times things will taste better because there's a lot of butter and salt in the food. And that is more or less masking or enhancing the ingredients. And that's not possible with AI anymore because AI can decompose the features of a product, or it can decompose the ingredients of, say a whey protein, right? If you're into that kind of stuff. So you cannot claim to be the best anymore. You cannot claim stuff that is not true anymore because AI can X-ray scan what's really in there and then debunk your marketing claims. And so as a result, good products will be part of the distribution because for the AI, it's easier to verify that this is really good product. And then last thing, and then I'll be quiet because I've been talking for a while. The last thing that I'm shining a light on is the effect on people, and that is pretty dear to my heart. If you look at that chart a little further down, you see this X chart, this X effect, this one, yes. And so what you see here, sadly, in red is the estimated but pretty data-driven attention span of average humans these days. It's not going up, spoiler alert. And in blue, you see basically the token context window of AI. And what this whole thing means is that AI is compensating for our shrinking attention span. And I can notice it and tell it firsthand because when I, on my screen, have 4 or 8 terminal windows running and each of them has a different AI agent with a different task, I can accomplish a lot more, but I'm context switching a lot more. And I'm incentivized to be lazy with my reviews and with my approvals so that I can be that efficient. But AI still makes mistakes. And so what it means is we actually need to spend more time reviewing stuff. It's just that this is really hard. Like reviewing is very, very draining. And so the flywheel here, the vicious circle here is that we're going to outsource a lot more thinking to AI because it's easier and makes us more productive and more efficient. But it's going to come at the cost of our own attention span. These muscles are going to atrophy. The human brain is very plastic. There's neuroplasticity, meaning it gets stronger in the things that it does repeatedly.
It's like a muscle. If you use it, it will work.
Exactly. And we're on the best path to atrophy our brains, which reinforces the usage of AI and outsourced thinking. So that is the big risk and the big trap that we need to avoid. And that's my article in 10 minutes.
Wow. Well, so first of all, thank you very much for explaining it. I think it's as you've been saying, very mindful piece that you put together, especially with those three different parts. First thing that just came up to my mind when I'm looking at this is, would you say these are correlated directly, or because obviously you've got so many more things that are actually incorporating into the reduction of the average time span that people are actually thinking. So therefore, this is just like an additional layer being pulled on top of it from what I've been seeing so far. We talked about this previously, that this is also due to social media, being on the TV, being on the phone the whole time. So not only working with the AI terminals, but also with many different other channels at the same time, and then just context switching over and over again. So it's really hard to concentrate for a long time period at this point.
It's a fantastic question. It's a classic case of correlation. So yes, these are correlated, but not anyway, it's not a causation. I think it's causal. Thank you. Causal. It's too early for us to detect this effect on our attention span specifically due to AI, but it is true that the human attention span is shrinking. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you can train yourself out of this, right? This is not a death penalty or death sentence. But the average human attention span is shrinking. And at the same time, AI's attention span, if you will, because attention is all you need, is growing. So yes, you're right. It's not the causation yet, but the trends are pretty scary.
Yeah. And even I would add one thing towards this, because basically what you've been saying throughout this whole article is that you can do everything, but at the same time we're just like becoming more and more slaves to our system. So I remember a presentation that I gave a couple of years ago where I had a slide about people just like becoming those zombies, those mobile phone zombies, just looking into those devices, and at the same time all of the others are learning. So we are becoming more and more dependent, less using our own brain power in order to achieve more things. And suddenly with all of those AI features, we actually can achieve much more, as you've been saying at the beginning, but the capabilities are reducing. So this is going to be a very interesting challenge
Yes.
in the near future.
It's the challenge of our time, right? And there's things you can do to revert that, right? I'm not going to go into the whole, here's how you increase your attention span. There's probably some good YouTube videos about this. But
let me vibe code a topic about this.
Vibe code a tool. Even especially for AI, I'm going to give you a good example just to make this more tangible. So I use a lot more Word to write my content lately. I usually use Google Docs and a bunch of other tools to put it together. But lately I've been using a lot more Word because now there is a Claude plugin or extension for Word, and it can read and respond to my comments. And so what I do, instead of writing a draft and then asking Claude to do all these things to the whole piece, I decompose my work. For example, if I don't like a heading, right, I don't tell Claude, rewrite the heading. I mark the heading as a comment and I say, here is what I don't like, and rewrite this heading. And instead of rewriting it, respond to my comment how you would rewrite it. And what it does, it keeps me engaged with my work instead of these massive jumps where all of a sudden it's new and I have to gain context from scratch, right? So decomposing your work into smaller tasks where you can still stay engaged is not just a good way to save your cognitive muscles, but it also allows you to catch hallucination and mistakes earlier. Because the bigger the change that AI makes, the less likely it is for you to stay engaged and the less likely it is for you to catch the mistakes.
Yeah, that's really good. and keeps you in the driver's seat. And I think that's like the most important part. Like everything that you're seeing with AI is just a tool. And there's always been the saying, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So you need to be in the driver's seat in order how to use it in order to maximize the output that you can actually create. I think Jan Ippen once said it's like AI is like a prothese. It can make you stronger, but you have to be still moving everything and make sure that it's working in the same direction.
Yes.
I think also the interesting part is the pace that we're looking at so far. So when we're moving a little bit away from your article, but still staying on this work macroeconomics impact that we're seeing, I think I just showed it to you previously, but I think still this is really interesting to see the magnitude on how active these tools are still being used. So obviously the adoption still is something where we need to make sure that, or where we have to know, or at least be aware that it's not being adopted as quickly as we actually anticipated, or many offerings from, doesn't matter if it's Anthropic, if it's OpenAI, that there's still some paths to grow, but theoretically the TAM is still quite big. We're looking at all of those dots represent about 3.2 million people, and we have currently all of those gray dots represent people actually never used really AI at this point. The green ones down here only represent those ones who have used a free chatbot in any kind. And then those yellow ones, which are, what is it, 7 dots at this point, have a paid subscription, which does not mean that they actually have used it. So I think that's also very important to remember at this point. And last but not least, only the last dot is actually the amount of people who currently use it in order to create things, and also to use it for creating code at this point. So I think this is also really interesting that on the one hand side, you have this massive acceleration of things you can actually create and actually put out there. And at the same time, this is just like such a small amount of people who are really leveraging these insights.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Also, I mean, this is a great addition. And then there's also this really interesting scientific paper called The Jagged Frontier. And what it basically says is that the evolution and improvement of AI is not the same for all the tasks, right? So if you think about a smooth frontier, it would just mean that with every improvement of AI, all the tasks that it can do get better. But instead, what's happening is that the frontier is jagged, which means that in some tasks, AI is amazing, and in others, it's really, really dumb, right? So part of the challenge of the adoption here for the people who have adopted it and are adopting it is to develop an understanding for what the tasks are that AI is really good at and where it's still really bad. And the tricky part is that's changing constantly.
With every new model, you definitely have to rechange everything and see how it's actually been going.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I think one of the reasons why I actually found this graphic is because it was mentioned at the, and I have to quote this, at the Coachella of online marketing, the Online Marketing Rockstars conference, or the OMR in Hamburg, which happened this week. And obviously one of the most highlights videos that were available by Pip is just fantastic view. I can just like recommend it to everybody to view it. And I thought this was perfect spot of the image of Pip being like, one does not simply go into mortar, one does not simply adopt AI at the same time. I think it's a very good piece what he mentions also, how everything's going to change. And I think like one takeaway that I've been just using from this is that we're seeing, or we're hearing that many people who are freshly coming from universities are going to have big problems in the near future. But he actually says there's a statistic that was released in 2010 already, saying that actually it's more due to a financial crisis or economical crisis rather than due to AI. And therefore, with AI, you want to have those people who are capable of adopting those changes quickest, which are actually the young people. And he gave the example as Amazon is currently also employing about, I think, 8,000 new interns to really be able to actually adapt on these changes themselves. So I think there's also like a very interesting shift on point of view that Pip's doing at this point.
It's a great one. I love it. He always gives fantastic presentations, and yeah, it's I can totally see this in my own work, right? I am lucky that I can make a lot of free time because I'm independent, right? I'm a single person company. And so I can take the time and invest into learning, which then speeds me up because I can build tools and automations that do a lot of the work for me. But not everybody has that privilege. And so there is a real shift between people who adopt AI and maybe get 10x gains on some tasks, and people who don't adopt AI and might potentially fall behind. And I do agree with you, right? I think the whole job entrance or juniors doomsdayer narrative is very flawed, because the benefit that people who enter the workforce have is that they have fresh eyes, right? They're not biased. They're not tied to old workflows or habits. Plus, they're cheaper, right? They don't cost as much. So I will not be worried about, my future or my daughter's future. As long as AI companies still hire people, that would be the first signal for me, right? They're still hiring copywriters, right? Anthropic
They're
has
still hiring
job.
SEOs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they're hiring SEOs. They're hiring copywriters. So it's so as long as that's still going on, I don't buy the whole AI replaces people. At least not yet. I can see that in the future. But there's a lot of fear mongering, and some of that fear mongering is being used by AI companies as the marketing.
Yeah, I think this also ties together with also something I heard. I believe it was one of the podcasts where it goes like, also the adoption of AI goes into, I think it was 3 different phases. So or 4 different phases. So people who don't adopt AI, so comparable what we've seen within the graphic previously. People who have tried it once, didn't see the value and just leave it. People who use it on a smaller level, for instance. So rewriting emails, shorten emails, just slightly improving things they're already doing. And then there are those real innovators. So those who really think how they can actually, from the beginning, redo their process that they already have. And these are the people who are going to win, especially this race.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So, I mean, now we just covered completely other topics than SEO, but it's so interesting how this all affects how we're working, what we can do, and also trying to get in there. And I think another point that we can take from here, if you use a paid subscription already, you're already on the front row of everything that's being developed. So even if you're not a person who's recoding everything, if you're not a Kevin Indig at this point, you're still very far in the front row. So I think this is also something we can take as a good message from here, that there's still some room where everybody can grow together.
Maybe to make this applicable to SEO real quick, just one sentence. So we know that classic search engine ranks are the foundation for AI search. And now it's going to get a lot more competitive, because the people that do automate a lot of the work, they will be able to compete a lot harder in classic search and therefore in AI search. And at the same time, if everybody automates more, it means that the margin for competition shrinks. So it's going to get harder.
Yes, I absolutely believe. I mean, if you're looking into the new strategy of Google, not becoming a channel or like traffic distributor, but keeping the traffic, that is being shared among the website owners. So this is also one of the reasons why everything's getting harder.
Yes, that does not help. More ads, more AI. I just listened to the Search Off the Record podcast with Martin and a colleague from the search quality team / AI team. And it was very interesting. It was one of the better ones. And they also said, like, one of the things you want to do is make sure that you don't rely on Google traffic. And I thought that was pretty telling.
That's indeed very telling at this point. So actually, Rudiger says, maybe controversial thought, but I see the use of AI in a way that solves problems faster, but recognizing the core problem has become weaker. I think that's actually true, because like, rather than to put everything into like a sentence, you just so I've got an idea, does this work? And you get the idea and you get possibly a good result directly back.
Rudiger is right, because the challenge, the risk is not just cognitive decline from using AI, it's also getting distracted. Because now all of a sudden you can do all these cool things, but you don't think about, should you do all these cool things, right? Every SEO, including myself, has a long backlog of ideas and lists of things that they always wanted to build or they always wanted to do with a client or a website. Now you can, for the most part. But now the question is, how do you invest your time and your attention? The attention you still have, does it go into the right things or not? So yes, I think prioritization is more important, critical thinking, and just like really making sure that the energy and attention you invest in goes in the right direction, and it's not just a shiny toy.
Yeah, classics. Classic SEO is the foundation, and still and will be for a while. Thanks, Martin, for that. Yeah. So I have this example from yesterday. So I was building a custom reporting, and I wanted to do some VLOOKUP within Google Sheets, which was a little bit more complex than the original one that I'm used to do. And I was really interested that I was just able to ask Gemini, I'm trying to do this, and it gave me the result immediately. And the first formula that it gave me actually worked exactly like a chime. And I thought this is like so interesting. So first of all, what I took from this is it was so necessary also to have this foundation on how to work with Excel. It wasn't like, oh, I want to combine this and see if this is working. So I was able to know the formula that I wanted to use at this point, but I did not give too much context at the same time. And the interesting part that I would take from this, obviously apart from getting the result quicker, is that maybe a year ago, I would have gone on different into the documentary, trying to find where's the formula, try to see how I need to adapt it, do many trials and errors until I get to the right product or to the right result that I wanted to have. Now, having said that, I thought it's really important to have had this in the back many years ago to have learned on this, to have this as a base, to know, okay, what might be working, what's not working. But being able to find these results quicker was something good to work on. So what I'm trying to say with that is it was cool to have the possibility to accelerate some parts, but it's also good to have a foundation where you can lean on to know what's actually physically possible to actually set up, and also broaden your mind.
Totally. It's the judgment problem. The judgment problem is essentially that AI can do really cool things for me. For example, it can review a legal contract, but I don't have the judgment to understand how good it is, right? And so therefore, I'm less likely to do it or use it when it comes to risky tasks, right? And that's another reason for why I don't believe in the like job replacement theory, at least right now. Again, long term, different story. But right now, I more so think that AI makes us much more effective and efficient because, I mean, when I say us, I mean people with experience and judgment, because only they know what needs to be built, what needs to be done, and what good looks like.
But isn't this contradicting to new set of eyes will enter the job market and have glorious times as well?
You need both, right? You need to challenge existing paradigms, but you also need to understand if that challenge makes sense or not, right? Which is, I think, probably an argument for young and old people working together and for keeping older people longer in the workforce.
Yeah. So in Germany, there's this concept of Mehrgenerationen-WG. So we need to do this in the world.
It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. I'm not going to get political here or too deep into silo changes, but there's something there from an AI and SEO angle.
Yeah, definitely. So Martin says just the challenge is to have enough momentum and trust on the top of the foundation. Yeah, I think I would agree. And we're making Rüdiger happy.
That's the goal here. That's the goal. Make our audience happy.
Yeah, make them use VLOOKUPs again and trying to identify. I mean, it's like one of the coolest functions there are, in my opinion, and it's being used very, very rarely, but it's so powerful.
You know how they say that every company is actually just a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Continue with some vibe coding at this point.
Soon an app.
Extended by vibe coding, let's put it that way.
Yep.
So we also have a couple of other topics that we've been seeing. And I think this is an interesting piece we've been getting back from Microsoft at this point. Also differentiating a little bit between traditional search and grounding search. And I think before we dive into the topic, I think it's also pretty cool that Bing just goes ahead and says, oh, well, we're very open to the information we give out there, we put out there. We just want to assist you and don't want to be real gatekeepers, so give you more assistance. And it kind of brings Bing also again back into the game as an SEO.
Totally. I mean, they're absolutely leading education and transparency when it comes to AI. I think it's the right call. Again, I will hold Google accountable and criticize them until they share more information, because I do truly believe that it makes the ecosystem better instead of just enabling more spam. And this article is amazing. I love it because it helps understand where AI search and classic search are different. And I said this earlier, SEO is the skeleton of the AI layer or body, if you will, but there's still flesh, tendons, veins, hair. You know what I mean? There's more to it than just the skeleton. The body cannot survive without the skeleton or stand up, but there's a lot more going on here. And so one thing that really stood out to me when I read this article was just how much the authors highlight the need for trustworthy and reliable information. The reason being is that with classic search, right, the task is essentially just to point the users in the right direction. But if the information is not good or accurate, then the search engine will learn from the user signal, simply because the users will not choose that source again. With AI search, it's very different, because AI search doesn't think in documents, it thinks in chunks and answers and information. And as a result, if information of a source is not verifiable and accurate, the system will just not pick that information, right? And so on the other side, to make that more tangible, I had a conversation with one of my clients, and essentially we found that linking out to a lot of sources seems to have a positive impact on citation rate. And this is just an early signal. I wouldn't call this a test even. So be careful with that. But this old school SEO myth, right, that we had a while ago, I think there's something there when it comes to AI search. But that's just one of the many nuggets that was shared in this article. It's a fantastic article.
I think it's really interesting, and I was going to say this a little bit later, but also going back to the Coachella of online marketing, the Omar, I heard the talk from Malte. I thought it was really fascinating. Also him giving the example of a client who had on the bottom of their page references to their competitors, which I heard about as an SEO strategy many years back, going into the direction like, if you don't find here the good result, don't go back to Google, go to those competitors directly. And apparently it turned out that these kind of links were like very high entities in a small part. So the LLMs took this information. So they cited the customer's website, but at the same time, they did not reference their own products. They referenced the competitors' products from their own page. So what they did is they just flipped the information, and suddenly they were actually very present within the LLMs.
Makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's, they work fundamentally different than search engines, with search baked into the core, into grounding. And you find these interesting new kind of problems to think about. It's not just reliability. There's also something to be said about the fact that search engines directly give the answer now. And so they're getting a lot more hesitant and careful with the sources that they cite in general. And again, like Bing, I applaud Bing for all the data that they're showing in Search Console already. And I forgot which conference it was, but they're bringing a lot more transparent data to Search Console, to their Bing Webmaster Tools. And that is just a gift, because Bing Search is used not just by Copilot, which is probably not everyone's favorite AI, but probably also by ChatGPT. And so that would be very interesting if you could find a direct line between grounding queries and Bing Webmaster Tools and ChatGPT results.
I think it was the SEO week in New York, right? Last week.
That was the second one, but yeah, they definitely shared it there. Yep.
Yeah, that was also very fascinating, just to provide this update.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting stuff. More reasons to use the Bing Webmaster Tools at this point as a standard product.
100%. And they have an API. Bing has an API, right? So as we're talking about vibe coding and stuff, you can pull a lot of information from the API into reports or tools. The AI stuff is not in there yet, but I really hope that they bring it in, and then it's going to be a fun time.
Okay. So speaking about information, so now you blamed a little bit Google, but at least you cannot say that they're not completely silent. And I think one of the other articles they brought out, and this was also one of those that did not get as much attention as as it seemed to me, especially on social media at this point. But also here, going back to the article, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, you spoke about it. The also agentic web engine optimization. Now this goes into the similar direction, but more officially on the Google terms. So I think that's really interesting that we're seeing more information trickling down that goes into the way on how to optimize for those different LLMs.
Yeah, another really good article. A couple of things that really stood out to me when you scroll further down the page. One was the accessibility tree. I'm like, okay, kind of makes sense in hindsight, but I wouldn't have, like it's a plus point for all the people that cared about accessibility over the last couple of years. But yeah, essentially agents take screenshots of your site, but they also verify with HTML, or better said, the other way around. They will first start with your HTML, and if they cannot make sense of your site from just the HTML, then they will also take screenshots on top of it. So something that is mentioned a little bit on the sidelines, but things like pop-up modals can really hurt you. So if you think about an agent coming to your site, the source code does not make sense, then they take a screenshot, but in that time, they already see an email pop-up that covers the shopping cart button. That might be really bad news for your site, right? So that is one of the things that stand out. There was another one when you scroll down a little bit more. So we have ghost elements, cursor, interactive elements, stable layout makes sense. You don't want your items or your navigation things to jump around. There was another one that I don't get to right now. But anyway, it's a good article. I wish this would be a bit more front and center and highlighted, but it's a start. It's a start. Agents are here.
Yeah, I don't know if you showed this on this show, but I created my own little token counter based on the agentic engine optimization article from Addy back at that time, to see, okay, is this a expensive piece of content that we're having at this point in time, and also just seeing, is this something, if we put it out there, would a LLM or an agent use much resources in order to find out what's going on? I also thought about what could other metrics be to look at this. And this is obviously also trying to get some insights from different AIs. But we have, for instance, what are the essential tokens that we calculated. So for instance, to get information like the title, the meta description, JSON LD, and these kind of things. Like, is there priority? And this is not using extra AI powered compute power to see what's going on, but also what's the difference between the signal and the noise? Like, do we have much noise through footer navigation, these kind of things, try and assess that. And I think this might be also an interesting metrics to look into in the near future, even though this is also something that's not as relevant as it might be in some years.
Nice. Yeah, love that tool. It's just another example for how you can make the work so much better and so much easier. So yeah, great one.
Yeah, and you can optimize in any kind of way. That was my first experiment on what you can do with vibe coding, and it got pretty far very quickly. I was really fascinated about these different opportunities that we can get with that.
Yes.
So looking into different opportunities and what are responses that we have had so far, I think Sears Interactive did a very interesting study, in this case, the Geo-Olympic study, in order to see, to validate 5 different hypotheses that I had. And I think even though we're looking also here more into different tactics, it's still interesting about those different areas that we can double check and see what's actually going. And also what you're saying previously, looking into entity authority, third-party validation seems to be providing some things to the table. And here are the different hypotheses they had. And what I thought was really interesting, just to have the hypothesis tested, and then also were they able to confirm it or not. And especially in this case, based on also here different heading structures that I've been using.
What stood out to you the most? Like, what was it? Was it like a finding or something that was surprising and new to you?
So I would argue that, especially, I was a bit not shocked, but I thought it was interesting that they went really far down those different areas, looking into those geographical areas, looking into the narrative persistence, that these have some strong correlation. So that actually they look into different resources at the same time and then assess is actually matching over those parts. And if you're having, for instance, one piece of content that just completely stands out and has something completely controversial saying, that this might be some kind of a challenge, which kind of makes sense, but it also ties back to the topic of trust that we've been looking at before.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a really strong point. Another interesting one, I think, was Reddit. So, Reddit is clearly cited as one of the most cited sources, right? Clearly mentioned as one of the most cited. Gotta be careful with my
a cited source for being cited.
And so, but they also clearly said how Reddit is not mentioned a lot, right? And I think it goes back to a problem that is often under discussed, which is that certain sites or certain business models, better said, they lend themselves really well for citations, which form and shape the answer, but they don't lend themselves for AI mentions. Other examples are TripAdvisor, review sites in general, right? They form the basis of the answer, but they're not mentioned with the brand. And so it's critical, if you want to invest in AI search, to understand like how high even are your chances to get mentioned or cited in the first place, and should you even aim for that? So we're learning something here about goal setting and success measuring.
Yeah, that's definitely true at this point. And also what we have been seeing is that Zippy has also a ranking factor analysis for AI citations. So I thought that this is a topic that goes pretty hand in hand to the previous one, to see how the things have been going on. And also here they have been looking into different areas and also trying to find what are different factors to actually double check on. Also here looking into what's repeatable, looking into the strength of the evidence they're having, also the official support they're seeing. And what I've seen is that you have been also one of the authors, or the contributors at this point.
Yay. Thanks, Cyrus, for that. I'm very glad that Cyrus is on Substack and is powering out great articles because his content is amazing. And so I think this is a great reinforcement of what we talked about earlier, which is that search and SEO specifically, or search ranks, are the skeleton of the body that is AI search. But there are also some things that are slightly different. I'm not even talking about fan-out queries. I think fan-out queries are similar to this idea of not optimizing for keywords, but optimizing for topics. So I think even that is a like a plus for classic SEO. But things like answer near the top, not relevant from a classic SEO perspective, very relevant from an AI perspective. Factually specific, right? This whole idea of explicit phrasing and very clear connections, never proven from an SEO perspective, very proven from an AI search perspective. And then freshness is one of these factors that I see as relevant for both, but so much more important for AI search. I would call it critical for AI search and optional and nice to have for classic SEO, unless you operate in news or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like always when I see freshness, I have the tendency of thinking about Discover.
Yes. Discover news.
Like, okay, yeah, we're just republishing all of the content, making sure that we are very dominant at this point. And obviously, last but not least, the LLM talks as txt at this point, which is kind of nobody really wants it, needs it. Still hasn't changed to when I was left for parental leave. So I thought that was really interesting. That still no big relevance at this point.
Yeah. No, I think this cookie's eaten. That train has left the station. I think LLM.text has been completely disproven as a viable tactic for AI search. And good, like we need more of that. We need critical thinking and more testing. And if something doesn't work, then we need to acknowledge that too. There was a lot of initial hype about LLMs.text, and multiple experiments from different people and parties have shown that it doesn't do anything.
And I think every LLM provider and AI company, they don't have it on their own website. I think that's like, at least last time I checked, but I think that's still always something to look out for. It's like
Exactly.
only Google tested it for some part, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, I think the search blog had it once or something, but yeah, not a.
maybe it was an easy test to go out and start seeing if it's working or not.
That's the thing. It's super easy to test, but that should also, avoid this being surfaced so many times or people using this so many times. But that's the nature of things.
Yeah, good. So speaking about tests and what things are being relevant, or especially also what might be ranking signals, and we seem to have some favorability about results that are being pushed from results from websites that we have decided to become a preferred resource at this point, which is kind of expected to say. Like if I say I want to have information by, I don't know, Münchner Merkur or Tageszeitung or whatever, obviously I want to see the results, right? But interesting how these things have been changing and how this has been going out. But it has been rolled out on more countries for now. So we can all select what kind of our preferred resources are. Kevin, are you still there? Am I losing you? Seems like we're having a couple of internet issues. Hello, hello. Let me just double check. Let me just check if the technology is still working, just to be sure at the same time. Going on. But we seem to have another case of strong German internet at this point. Yes. So speaking of these different results that we're seeing, I think one of the interesting features that we can use, and I think that Resoneo did an interesting case. Oh, now you're back, right?
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh, good, good. Strong German internet, right?
Yeah, German infrastructure, blessing.
Yes. Yeah, but basically we see that preferred sources kind of tend to override weak signals at this point, which basically comes as expected.
And it's a good feature for users, right? Like I want to, or I'm happy to prioritize certain resources. The thing is, it is also kind of a way for Google to admit that they're not able to filter this better algorithmically. Because in theory, my user behavior should indicate what the sources are that I prefer, and Google should highlight them and put them front and center in news, but for some reason they can't. And so relying on users to add sources, yeah, I think, again, as a user, not bad, but I wish the sources would already be so good so that I don't need to manually add them.
What do you think there's more to the story than we anticipate at this point, since you said they can't, but maybe they just don't want to?
Yeah, maybe I have to think about why would they not want to. One reason could be to leave a certain amount of freedom and flexibility to users. That is always kind of a bit of a challenge with search. Do you make it so narrow that it's perfectly accurate, or broad enough so that people can discover themselves and make more choices themselves, right? So it's a good question, but Google will always argue with the same narrative, which is it's better for users and blah blah blah. But now you have all the publishers basically chasing you and saying, "Oh, add us to your preferred sources, add us to your preferred sources." Like YouTube creators ask you to subscribe to the channel, and it's not a big deal.
Subscribe this channel.
Yep, exactly. Subscribe to 3 of a kind. And it's not a big deal, right? It doesn't hurt me in any way. But again, I'm surprised why Google cannot solve this algorithmically.
Yeah. Or they can say, look, you're a publisher, but nobody wants to add you to your preferred sources. Maybe you should think about that.
Yeah, right. Maybe you don't appear in Google News anymore, right? I don't know. I'm happy to add my sources, but man, it's a weird one. Why would they invest so much time in that?
And here we got a very nice feature where we can actually see what are the top resources suggested per country. And for instance, you can double check which is in Germany. And I wouldn't have thought about that. Ich Tanke is one of them. I want to see what their marketing hack is at this point.
Ich tanke, okay. In English, it's I get gas.
I get gas.
But yeah, I don't know why. What's that site even?
Oh, now I know what's important at the moment.
Yeah, because of the gas prices, sure.
Interesting. Yeah. And we can also see that this has been rolled out now globally at this point.
Yep.
So also here, interesting that this isn't just for a couple of countries, but on a regular basis.
Yeah, you see on the right-hand side, the ads SEJ is a yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But actually, I was nearly starting to be banner blind with this.
Yeah,
so I was already just focusing on the main content piece to see what's been going on.
Yeah, did you hear that they're removing all the ads from SEJ?
No.
Yeah. What's his name? He made a big announcement on LinkedIn saying that they're removing. I mean, they're removing all banner display ads, but they might keep like lead gen and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Going to see how this will evolve in the near future.
Yes, we're going to monitor the situation.
Going to monitor the situation. And I think with that, we also finished with our sources at this point, and therefore we can now successfully redirect you temporarily to the weekend. Thank you everyone for your attention and hope to see you soon next week. Until then, happy optimizing and have a great weekend.
Thanks for jumping in, Andy. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.